Hey, Dreamaniacs! And we are back. If you're tuning in for the first time, you are watching Money Mindset Matters, the brand ambassador series on the show Almost Naked Conversation with Szebastian Onne on Dreamaniac TV. In this show, the first thing that we focus on is, as the name says, Almost Naked Conversation. We focus on topics that are difficult, topics that are taboo, topics that people don't like to talk about, things that people are too embarrassed, ashamed, or prejudiced against to speak about. And one of those topics is money. Money touches every part of our lives. And that's why our brand ambassador, Eleni Anastos, came up with her own brand ambassador series, Money Mindset Matters. As the name explains, it really does matter. We always focus on saying, I don't love money. I just do it for, survival, or somehow money is always presented as something bad. Liking money, loving money, having a relationship with money is shown as something unhealthy. There's a lot of stigma around it. And that's why Eleni Anastos, the brand ambassador of Dreamaniac TV, and I, Szebastian Onne, came up with this series, Money Mindset Matters, to discuss all those taboos, to discuss all the stigma, the prejudice, the fear and the shame, and every negative feeling that has been created in our social construct about having a relationship with money. But before I go further, I want to tell you a little bit about Eleni Anastos. Eleni Anastos is not just the ambassador of Dreamaniac TV. She's the founder of Business Insights Now, an organization that helps people establish a better, a healthy relationship with their money and create a synergy that allows you to earn better, to live better, and to be proud of making money and not be ashamed of it. Whether you're a corporate or an entrepreneur or a professional or just an individual who is interested in how they can have better control of money, on money, around money, and how they don't feel bad about liking money. Eleni Anastos and her organization helps these organizations and professionals to understand all the stigma that's there, understand the gaps, the leakages, the weaknesses that make your relationship with money unhealthy, that make relationship with your money as something not to talk about, and that make you feel like liking money is a bad thing. It really isn't. And I learned about that as I got to know Eleni more. I started working with her a lot more. I am not only just a co-host with her, I'm also her client, and I also work with her on several other projects. And as the relationship grew, one thing I learned about this woman is she has an amazing way of making you understand why money is great for you, why loving money is an absolutely beautiful thing. And in that process, when Money Mindset Matters came up, we saw a lot of interest. We saw people reacting, asking questions, difficult questions, asking things that usually people are too ashamed to talk about. But let me not go on and on and on. I just want to make sure that you get to meet this wonderful lady again. If you're watching in for the first time, this is season 1 and episode 3 of Money Mindset Matters on Almost Naked Conversation with me. And we have only covered a few topics. We know that the demand, the reactions, the interaction, the questions that we're receiving, this is going to be a big thing. So we just want to ask you, if you have any interest in money, if you feel bad about loving money, if you feel ashamed about loving money, if you feel great about loving money, no matter what your interest is, come join us. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this. And to make this conversation complete, I need to bring my co-host to the show so that we can begin the conversation and let's understand why money is a great thing, why having a relationship with money is a healthy thing. So let me bring my co-host, Eleni Anastos, the founder of Business Insights Now, to the show. Hi, Eleni.
Hello, 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 Sebastian, and hello to all of you wonderful people listening and watching.
Okay, so, well, as you saw, I was talking to the audience about, how we met, how we started this entire
Yes.
show, and how money plays an important role, and all the stigma, all the negativity around money.
Yes.
Hi, Bash. Thank you for tuning in from Philippines and also producing our show. Um, so, money is such a huge stigma. I have to say, it's like a disease. People see it as a disease. And
Well,
yet, we can't survive without money, can we?
no, money impacts everyone everywhere. It doesn't matter what your current station in life is. Money is a part of life. And as we discussed previously, there is a lot of guilt and shame around money. And I see that connected to really how we've grown up, from a
Yeah.
young child, what we heard, whether it's watching our parents or observing other people that might be close to us. You especially around debt. We've talked about how many people have that stigma, that guilt and shame around debt. And, that guilt is that feeling that you've done something wrong. And shame.
Let me stop you for a second because that's where we need to first go into all of that because I know a lot of people don't even realize,
The
the guilt and
difference.
shame, right? So I actually just want to ask you, you and I especially talk about the guilt and shame,
Yes.
and this is what this episode is: money, the guilt, and the shame. Um,
Yes.
this is the interesting part. Not many people even realize they have a guilt around money or they're embarrassed to have money or not have money. So my first question to you really is, and that's why I stopped you because I want people to understand this is very important. The,
Yes.
un, the very concept of guilt and shame around money is so
Yes.
huge, but there is a difference. So
Yes.
I want to begin with asking, what is the difference between guilt and shame around money?
Yes. Well, guilt by itself, people think that they've done something wrong. Maybe it was an action you took or a mistake you made. But the shame means you feel like there's something wrong with you. And that's a whole nother layer, a whole nother layer. But either way, it's such a negative energy connected with money, which we don't need to have because money we do need to have. Money is a part of our life, whether you love it now or not. So once we can help people release that guilt and shame connected to it, oh, they'll be able to move forward in a more empowered way.
Absolutely. I just want to quickly acknowledge a couple of people. Maddie Harris is joining live from Clearwater Beach.
Hey.
Thank you for joining, Maddie. And I see some other people are commenting as well. As they come in, we'll start acknowledging them. So that is so true. And this is interesting for me, to be ashamed of to be ashamed of having or not having money. We give so much importance to money. And we have
Yes.
Adam Clark live from UK.
Keep
Thank you,
going.
Adam, for joining in. So people are so ashamed about money. I feel
Mhm.
like, why is money so important in a negative way for people when, but one thing is clear, money is important. You know that, I know that, and people who don't acknowledge that, they know it too. Money is important. Money is everywhere. And yet they're embarrassed. They're ashamed. Why?
Why? Well, again, I think it's connected to stories that we witness when we grow up, either by watching our parents or watching people close to us on both sides, whether it's debt or whether it's wealth. I mean, I
Right.
remember hearing people say, oh, if somebody lost their job or they may have lost their house, and you might hear judgments made like, oh, that person's lazy or they did something wrong to end up in that situation. And on the
Right.
wealth side, I've heard so many people, it's the same kind of intense judgment. But what I have found out through people I've worked with, and I'm so grateful for the way I was raised with my grandparents and my mom, that it wasn't the judgment around money, but I would listen to people say things like, well, why do you need to live in such a big house? Or why do you need to spend so much money on a car? Or why do you need clothes like that? So it's
Right.
judgment on both ends, whether you're in debt or whether you have wealth. And
Right.
if you don't have a healthy relationship with money, that could make you feel uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Carl from Carl Davenport, for, joining from live from South Carolina. Carolina. Sorry, I always do
Carolina.
that with Carolina.
Okay.
Well, Australia versus America, so it's always going to be there.
It's all
Um,
good.
I see other people joining in as well. We'll see as the comments come in. And that's the thing. You're talking about having money and why do we need a bigger house? That's the thing I realized even in my personal life as well. My parents started off very poor, worked hard for money, made wealth happen. We lived a comfortable life. Uh, I don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The guilt and shame. Now, I don't hear or see you, Sebastian, so I don't know if something happened as a glitch, but I will keep talking. Yes, there is guilt and shame connected to money. And especially the irony of the guilt and shame connected to having wealth, because a lot of people sometimes see that as being disloyal. For example, maybe you grew up in middle class, lower class, upper class, it doesn't even matter. But if you grew up in an area where you weren't used to seeing a lot of financial wealth, then if you learn to somehow amass it on your own, some people can feel that they're being disloyal to how they grew up or being disloyal to their community or former friends. And that
Right.
adds to their guilt and shame about the wealth.
Right. And as I was saying, somehow, even as a child, whether it's my classmates, whether it's society around me, somehow, as a child, I'm not talking about even when I understood what money is, I was made to feel guilty about being in a family where everything was available just because we
Mhm.
had it. My parents
Yes,
worked hard for it. They were, they are everything legal, everything, hard-earned money, honest money. Yet
right,
somehow it was my fault or my parents' fault that we had everything. We were the first to have things. We were the first to have new technology. It wasn't easy. It was something that was, we aimed for. We worked
right,
for, as my
right.
parents would say. And I
Yes,
can say I was only 15 when I started working, because even though we had everything, one thing I learned was ma- set your goals, make things happen, right?
right.
So, and yet somehow that was a negative thing to have that. So shame also comes from the social construct. You're shamed for
Absolutely.
having money,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And it's not about saying, we're not saying by any stretch of the imagination that people need to attain a certain amount of money, because I think that's completely individual, that what you want needs to feed you and serve your purpose. The point is to release the judgment and the shame connected to it.
Right. Robin is also commenting. And Robin, thank you. I am back on this show. There was a little tiny hiccup. We are good with that. We have great producers and directors behind the scenes. So I
Yes.
am back. And if you guys still can't see me, just let us know. So there were some other comments I just want to quickly acknowledge. Let's see. Looks like I can't see the comments. Are you able to see the comments, Eleni?
No, I can't from this end right now.
Okay, no worries. So we're just going to keep going. Sorry, guys, we are not, Facebook is having many glitches, so we are not necessarily seeing all the comments. If we don't see your comments, our producers are going to help to read
Yes,
out some, and we will acknowledge them. Otherwise, after the show, we will 100% get back to all of you. But please keep
absolutely.
commenting, keep participating.
Please.
So we were talking about, guilt and shame and having wealth, but there's another thing.
Right.
When you don't have wealth, when you don't have enough, I'm going to put it this way, Eleni. If I don't have enough money and I'm not asking anybody for help, I'm not taking anybody from anyone, and yet somehow I feel the guilt. When I say I'm talking about people who go through this. I have gone through this. I'm sure all of us have gone through this. Um, and I call you money goddess. So before being the money goddess, I'm sure you have also experienced the guilt that we are raised to feel for being poor as well, for trying to make our
That,
ends meet.
yes,
So
yes.
why is that guilt inside
Well,
us?
there's long-standing been so much guilt connected to having debt. And you really can't move forward unless you learn to release the guilt and shame connected to debt. But first of all, I want to say debt can reflect who you were in the past. It does not have to represent who you are moving forward. But also, probably most importantly, I think people need to understand why they have the debt, because sometimes
Right,
there's good reasons. Maybe you were able to get a mortgage so you could move into a house, put a roof over
right,
your family's head. You were able to get a loan from the bank to start a business. You
right,
were able to get a student loan to further your education. So there's so much that's good about having debt, but you have to be willing to look at, have you been spending a lot of money to fill some void? Is it just unconscious spending because of how you feel or you think something's missing? Again, you've got to be willing to look at that. That makes the biggest difference, because you absolutely can release the guilt and shame connected to debt. And my question that I want to ask everybody that may be beating themselves up about having had debt in the past or being currently in debt, and you judge yourself, that what if judging yourself were a poison you no longer drank? So you refuse to judge yourself. You're just no longer willing to drink that poison. You're not going to judge yourself. Then we could start creating, that new perspective. And don't be afraid to have an open conversation. You can reflect back and say, well, having debt doesn't make me what? It doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you wrong, doesn't make you ignorant, not at all. And then ask yourself how you were feeling when you took on that debt. Maybe you were scared about something. Maybe, you were in fear. You had some worry around something. And you also have to look at what was motivating you. Were you taking on debt to seek approval from someone or something? Did you take on debt to win somebody's affection? Did you take on debt to feel significant? So, please be willing to look at those. And again, it's not about right or wrong. It's about willing to really look in the mirror and understand why you took it on, and please
exactly.
releasing that judgment.
And this is the thing. I don't know why people actually see debt as wrong, because look, our entire society is driven in debt, by the debt, right? The
Mm-hmm.
credit cards, the loans, everything. But debt is not a sin. It's not a crime.
No,
You're you're
no.
you're taking debt based on your income. Thank you, Eddie, joining live from Toronto, Canada. Guys, if you're watching, Eddie is the Chief Strategy Officer for Szebastian. Just wanted to introduce you guys. And Violet, live from Philippines. I'll come back to more acknowledgements in a second. But yes, debt is not necessarily a sin or a crime. In fact, it isn't.
No,
If you
no.
plan it well, if you do things right, if you balance it with what you're earning versus what your goals are, what you want to gain in life, where do you want to be, if you're doing it
Mhm.
in a very balanced and a very planned manner, that is actually a strategy to grow. It is
Right.
actually a success strategy, right?
Right, absolutely. But to get to that point, people have to release that guilt and shame. They've got to forgive themselves. And if forgiveness is not part of your mindset, then really
Mhm.
I'm just saying, let that shit go.
Yeah,
Stop beating yourself up. Because when we keep judging ourselves, we keep rereading a chapter that's already been written and we're not going to move forward. So
absolutely.
whatever needs to be done to let it go. And
Absolutely.
we can do
All
that.
right. So let me acknowledge some more comments because I know technology played a little hiccup here. So Robin
Okay.
Badura from Redford, Michigan. Thank you, Robin, for joining us.
Yes.
Let's see, who else do we have here? I saw a couple of other comments, and I think that's where the Facebook is just getting stuck, but that's okay. We're just going to go. Eddie was here as well. Adam said something. Producer, if you can please send us the comment in the background because we can't. Oh, there you go. Adam said, we're in control of how much we want. No one else gets to judge. Maybe the judgment is jealousy. That's a great point. Maybe the judgment is
Absolutely.
jealousy. Maybe it is. I've actually never looked at it that way, but yeah,
Well,
it makes
it's
sense.
still, Adam makes a great point, and regardless of it, being jealousy or not, is that it's still a judgment. I come from the mindset, hey, whatever works for you. If
Right.
that's what you need, go for
Yeah,
it. Because I don't
exactly.
expect anybody else to feel exactly the same way I do about it. So, yes, Adam makes a great point. And if you do feel jealousy, then you need to look in the mirror and dig deeper and question why.
Absolutely. And you know what? You need to talk to Eleni to understand why you're behaving that way. And I want to acknowledge Kirti Hari from live from Sri Lanka as well. We
Wonderful.
have a very global audience today. Did you notice?
Yes.
Sri
Yes.
Lanka, US, UK, Philippines. I love this. This is great.
Yay.
I think, people are connecting to this show. People are finding value in this is a topic really. I'm going to relate compare it with other things that just like cancer, HIV, sexuality, other so many things. People don't talk about that. Money
Mhm.
is similarly an epidemic people don't talk about. It is nearly an epidemic of not talking about it in a good way.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm glad that we're doing this show. I'm glad I have the Money Goddess with me, and I'm glad we have the Money Mindset Matters series. Speaking of which, I just want to mention very quickly the series is being sponsored by Coach A.M. Williams. He
Mhm.
is the co-author of best-selling book, The Resilience
Yes.
from Setback to Comeback, which is a great book to read, guys. It's around the same concept, not necessarily about money, but it is about the same thing. When you have setbacks in life, when you have setbacks professionally, how do you
Yes.
come back from that? So,
Yes.
go to Dreamaniac.com /draw and check out his book is actually also in the draw as well. Check out for more
Yes.
information and look for Coach A.M. Williams on Facebook and LinkedIn too.
Yes.
So, speaking about coming from setback to comeback,
Yes.
uh, how can someone really release the shame and the guilt around money? How can they begin the work to get out of that hole they're digging for themselves? Is how I see it.
Again, it's refusing to drink that poison, which is judging yourself and understanding why you took on that debt in the first place. Understanding your internal motivation. Again, it could have been fear. It could have been you were seeking approval. It could have been wanting to feel significant in some area. But it's really being able to ask yourself those questions in an honest way to let it go, and then becoming a conscious spender, being conscious with your money, and having intentions about what you're going to do forward when you do need to make an investment, when you do need to make a purchase. Because I know we're going to be sharing a lot of nuggets, if you will, of what people can do when they are in debt that makes you realize that it's not the end of the world. There is another side. You can get through it. You
Absolutely.
will get through it.
Absolutely. And I think once you begin the work, once you start, I think the first work first step really is acknowledging you
Absolutely.
have a problem. Acknowledging your mindset needs a change, acknowledging that you are in a place where you're thinking negatively and you need to work around that. The moment
Right.
you acknowledge, your work actually begins. I think that's the first step towards success, right?
Right.
And speaking of which, I would like to, ask you if we can share some nuggets with people, some golden nuggets, some ideas,
Yes.
how, how they can help themselves with the debt, how they can
Yes.
have it. I think my perspective here is how they can first start looking at debt as a good thing and working towards having a healthy debt. I know we haven't spoken about it, but just like healthy money, debt is healthy too. It's how you treat it, how you make it.
Well, not necessarily that it's always healthy. It's why you took on the debt. As I had said
Right.
before, if you took it on for a good reason, like buying a house, furthering your education, uh, taking care of a medical bill, of course. But if you're just self-medicating by spending, you've got to be willing to look at that too. And because I know firsthand what it's like to have a lot of debt and how to come out of it and get to the other side. And the first thing I want people to really understand is you don't have to feel when you're facing debt that you really want to get rid of. You don't have to feel impoverished. If you're so strict, it's like being on a diet and you're trying to lose weight that's so strict, you always feel like you're being denied or you're depriving yourself, then you're going to end up splurging and blowing it anyway. So don't feel so impoverished. Still, you can treat yourself in a small way. You can attend a free event. You can do things that make you feel like you're still living.
That's such a great point because so I'm gonna go into little immigrant mode here now. When I moved to Australia first time, I was a student. It was a big country. Moving from India to Australia, of course, currency is a huge change. Almost
Mm-hmm.
um, 50 times more, or even higher than that. Um, One thing that I felt was that as we talk about guilt and shame, my first guilt was like, oh, I don't have enough money to go out with people. People must think that, I'm such a miser. I don't spend, but I don't have any, right? And that was such a struggle. It was eating me up. At the same time, I'm
Mm-hmm.
in a new country. I want to explore the country. I want to do things together, and I want to live my life. Well, I'm young now, but I was very, very young, right? So that was what you just shared is something a friend shared with me. In fact, one of my teachers shared with me, and she said, I see that you're very active, very bubbly, very intelligent, but what I see is I've never seen you going out doing any activities. You're always just at school. When it's vacations, you're in the library. Why? What's the reason? And I told her exactly that. I said, well, I don't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
I have enough to get by, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
have enough to go and do things. And that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly, she gave me a sheet of 101 free things you can do in
Mm-hmm.
Melbourne,
Exactly.
right? It's amazing. You won't believe those 101 things. I think people don't even realize how much is out there that you can do
Right.
for free. You get to be healthy, you walk around a little bit, you have a fit lifestyle, you get to learn so much more about new cultures, people, society, and you evolve and develop as a person. And
Yes.
it also changes your money mindset because suddenly you actually start looking at, oh, well, the activities are free. I just need to think about my food. So you make great food, you arrange a picnic, and
Yes.
suddenly from being into a guilty and ashamed and embarrassed mindset of money, suddenly you're living a full life. You're able to focus on other things. And the thing is, the reason I'm mentioning this is in doing all of this, you're looking after your mind and soul, which is helping you go and work hard and earn better, have better relationship with money. So becomes a complete circle, and it becomes a very positive,
Right.
result in the end. And Adam is saying having no debt at all in the UK can inhibit your credit rating. So
Absolutely.
balance and being sensible is key. Great point, Eleni. And
Yes.
absolutely, Adam. And
Yes.
it's same in Australia, same in America. if you don't have any debt at all, you're actually not, you don't won't get a good credit rating.
Right. Well, and speaking of credit ratings, another thing that people can do when they are in debt is negotiate lower interest rates. Now, not all credit card companies and loan institutions do it, but some do. But you're not going to know if you don't ask. So please don't be afraid to pick up the phone to find out. And one of the biggest things I see, because again, I've done it myself in the past, while you're trying to rebuild and get out of debt, please stop loaning people money.
Oh
And
my God,
that includes your adult children. You know, and I'm not talking about if somebody comes to you, it's in dire straits, they're an emergency, it's a medical situation. We all, I'm sure, have had experience with folks that said, hey, can you give me some money for this? Can you give me some money for that? Because if loaning people money is putting you deeper in debt, you've got to stop. You've got to build up those boundaries and let them know, hey, I am working on reducing my debt. I am taking charge of my personal finances, and build those boundaries. Because then you also give them the chance to step up to the plate. Because having clear boundaries is supposed to benefit both people. You are honoring yourself, but again, you're also giving that other person the chance to step up to the plate and figure it out on their own.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of which, we have a poll going on right now. So guys, if you're watching right now, just on your right-hand corner, if you're on a PC or a laptop, on your top right corner, where you see the live, you'll see a little poll going on. And really, all we're asking is, do you feel guilty or ashamed because of having too little or too much money? And answer is yes or no. Please enter the poll. We would love to see how, which state of mind you're in, how your relationship with money is, and we'll share that. And Carl said, we were making point about the credit rating. Carl said same in USA, what Dan said. So absolutely. And that's the thing. You're talking about boundaries with friends, and I think friends, business, relationships, it is, in fact, the closer the relationship, it's more important to have the boundary. It's more important to have the paperwork.
Absolutely.
It's more important to have the clarity, because you know what? If money ruins something between friends, you're losing two things. You're losing money, you're losing business, and you're losing a friendship. And I think you're losing a lot more than you can't even define.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
And I have to say, Eleni, sorry, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to share another nugget, but go on.
Go ahead.
One thing that may surprise most people, and I learned, I used to think I had to wait till I paid everything off before I could rebuild. And actually, an important strategy is to save while you're paying down debt. Now, you can decide, say, whatever money comes in, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 10%. It's important to start saving, because you're rebuilding your foundation while you're paying off the debt. So then when you are debt free, you've got that solid foundation, you're back on even ground.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And there's some other comments I'm just going to acknowledge. Robin says, being healthy with your money versus unhealthy with money. Oh my God, so true, right? It is all about that. It is really about that. And I saw a couple of more comments. Let's see if we can find them. But yes, guys, please do participate in the poll that we have got running. Eleni, I'm just going to sidetrack a little. I just want to talk about, since we mentioned friendships and boundary, I have experienced this a lot and I think this is again about the guilt and the shame, but in a different angle, from a different angle. When we have business relationships with our friends or relatives, especially, and I have an example from my dad and his sister. So something I learned at a very young age, which I love, and I'll share that in a second. But when we have a relationship which is multi-layered, we have a friendship, or we are maybe even spouses, we are maybe even dating, but we have a business together, or we are providing services to each other, we're friends. Any kind of relationship, personal relationship is going on, and you have business together. Sometimes we make mistakes like oh, we undercharge. We talked about underpricing last in our last few episodes. We undercharge and then we regret, but then we feel guilty about going back and saying, oh, you know what? I charge you less and I'm struggling. I'm not even meeting my costs. I am actually, I don't even have the resources right now from what you're paying to me to provide you the service. So, and I have personally faced this. So despite having that situation and clarity, why do we feel this guilt about not going back and just honestly saying to our friends who are our friends, and we should be able to be honest with them? So why don't we go and say it to them?
Is it guilt, or is it maybe the fear of some kind of repercussion that I don't want to risk the relationship, or I don't want to damage the connection we have?
Great point. I think it is that. I think it is that. Like, I think it's the same fear that, okay, if not only am I losing money, I might lose a friend as well. But I see it as, Eleni, I see it as very, very, if I don't take an action, I am still losing money, and I am not going to be able to provide great services because I don't have the right resources with that money, and friendship is going to get affected in the end. So isn't it better to actually take action before it reaches that point?
Yes. And I always go back to intentions. Absolutely agree. It's better to take action. And honestly, if I didn't care about the relationship, if it wasn't that close, it's easier to just cut your losses and say goodbye. Money is gone. But if your intention is to have a healthy, honest, open relationship going forward, then you've got to be willing to put yourself out there. So I absolutely agree that it is honoring yourself and respecting the other person by saying, I made a mistake when I did this, when I started this arrangement with you. I want us to be solid going forward. Here's what it's going to take.
Right. And so I think, thank you, Bash. Bash says, love the hair, Szebastian. Thank you. I did a little bit different. Okay. Yes, absolutely. And, again, speaking of all the guilt and shame that we have, what can people do to move beyond barely making the ends meet? A lot of that, I see that a lot. I have gone through that, and I see that a lot, absolutely, where people, they're living, they're earning. I'm not saying they're not earning well. They're earning okay. They're earning decent enough.
Right.
They're paying all the bills on time. They're doing everything that they need to do. But what they're not doing is they're not growing. They're not going forward. They're not rising from where they are. Adam says, I have a fear of too much debt. What might be if I went too far? So balance is my game. Oh, that's a great point. Eleni, do you want to help Adam on that?
Yeah, no, that is a great point. And again, talking about balance, but the question to me is always why you take on the debt and to be conscious about it. So again, if it was to grow your business, it was to further your education, if it was to invest, in properties or something else. But it's to be conscious and then having the intention behind it. So I'm going to make this purchase, and the intent is that I'll get a return on my investment. What's the ROI? Or if it's just something that you've been saving and you wanted, maybe it's a vacation, maybe it's a toy, if you will, for the water. That's okay. But be very conscious with, once you spend it, how do you intend to pay it off? So you're always in control of the money. It doesn't control you.
Right. So I actually have a question, but before that, let me just read out a comment. Bash says, money mindset, money, money, money. Talking about it can feel weird, but isn't it the foundation of our whole life?
Yeah,
that's true. I don't know why do we feel weird about it. Even today, I even go through that too. I have to admit.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so many limiting beliefs around it. I mean, hearing as a kid, whether it was your parents or anywhere that was close to you, that, there's never enough to go around. Money's the bad guy, or money is evil. So you grow up with all these limiting beliefs that make you feel like, oh, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to deal with it.
It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing to talk about. It's, I have to say, it's like, shh, adults are here, don't say this, things like
Right.
that.
Right.
So it's you from the beginning, you're made to feel like, oh, it's not something you should talk about in public. um,
Right.
talking about all that, I have a couple of questions for you from my experience on this. I guess I'm just trying to get a little bit more nuggets for people.
Yes.
We make the mistake of having this guilt, having this shame. I wouldn't call it mistake, but yes, that's how we grow up. That's how the mind construct has become over the years. Um, when How can we recognize that I am living in a guilt? I am feeling ashamed. Sometimes we don't even realize what are the triggers or ways to recognize, am I going through guilt and shame when I should not? Is there any way to kind of any signals we can catch?
Well, guilt and shame thrive in the darkness. So as long as people can't see, say for example, you've been short on money or you lost your job and they're about you can't pay your electric bill and the lights are going to be turned off. From the
Hmm.
outside world looking in, they may not know you're struggling. They may not see that there's no food on the table, but you
Hmm.
keep surviving, you keep moving forward a little bit because they can't see it. But if
Right.
you have but if you have that foreclosure sign duct taped to the outside of your door, that's for the whole
Uh,
world to see. So once
right.
it's exposed, once the outside world can see, then it goes back to, oh my God, I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be
Yeah.
judged.
Absolutely. Carl is saying some or the right amount of debt can be a
Yes.
motivator to take the proper
Yes.
action to eliminate it, especially if you love what you're doing to reduce the
Yes.
debt. Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, I want to go on with that because it leads into what we
Sure.
talked about. We talked about it last night briefly, how so many people just scraping by, they just barely make ends meet month after month. And it's
Yeah.
like this vicious cycle. I really want to implore people to think about raising their standards
Yeah.
because everybody
Oh my
knows
God. Yes. Yes. Please go on. Yes.
everybody for the most part has a regular need each month, whether it's your mortgage or your rent, car payment, insurance, utilities. Those bills are fairly consistent from one month to the next. So you have your basic need, if you will, of what you need. And think about people talking about, or even how they talk to themselves. Okay, I just need $3,000 to cover my bills each month, or I just need 5,000. It doesn't even
Right.
matter what the amount is. You're so focused on just barely making it that you're keeping
Mm,
yourself stuck in that world. And if you
right.
want something more for yourself, what I have seen, because I know I've done it myself, is that I've lowered my standards to meet my finances instead of
Right.
raising my standards and have my finances pick up. So when I talk about raising your standards, raising the bar, say that you need 5,000 a month to cover your bills. Make it 5,100 or 5,200. Whatever the amount is, it doesn't matter as long as it raises your standard above that need line. Then you're
Yeah.
going to start looking for ways to make it happen. You're going to start thinking, how can I grow even more instead of, oh, thank God I just barely made it. No, raise
Right.
your standards.
You're right. Lionel says, love the topic, really hits me where it matters. And
Mm.
I want to say, I know we're very close to the wrap up, but before we do
Oh,
that, we still have time. So I just want to remind people, guys, if you're tuning in right now, you're watching Money Mindset Matters, a brand ambassador series by Eleni, Anastos, and myself on the show, Almost Naked Conversation with Szebastian. That is this guy. On Dreamaniac TV. So, guys, if you're watching anywhere else, right now this is being broadcasted around 37 to
yes.
40 pages. Please, please, please come to facebook.com/Dreamaniac TV so we can see your comments. And just like everybody else is participating, we can put up your comments as well and participate and interact with you directly. So, talking about it's an amazing topic that you just raised, Eleni. One of
Mhm.
my staff mentions things like that, and there were other topics we were talking about, and I really saw exact same thing. And I talked about raising standards by default.
Mhm.
People question, oh, but um, am I worth that? Maybe that's how much I should be charging, because there are other people who are charging less. I know I'm going a little bit towards
That's
the
okay.
previous episodes, but that's it. The comparisonitis, as you talk about, the
Mhm.
comparing your
Yes.
pricing with other and not valuing yourself,
Yes.
that plays a big part in not raising your standard, because you're
No,
constantly trying to compare
lowering.
yourself with something else. Exactly. and
Yes.
and how, and I especially I'm focused on people who doubt their own pricing and undercharge, underprice themselves. I want to speak to them through this particular point, that when you raise your standards, you're not charging more to your clients, you're charging what you're worth. You are charging for your hard work, you're charging for your intellect, for your research, for all the hard work you put together to make something wonderful happen for your
Yes.
client.
It's raising it. Keep raising the bar. Now, I started this particular business over 5 years ago. Now, the fees to invest to work with me now, today in 2019, are they higher than they were 5 years ago? Absolutely. But the
Right.
amount of service that I bring to my clients, the amount of skill that I bring to my clients, I've continued to raise my standards for my work every year. So it's still a match.
Exactly. And that's what it is. Like, hey, I'll put it this way. Doesn't the inflation go up? It does. It's the fruit and vegetables are not getting cheaper any day soon. They get dearer and dearer. So if we even look at it that simple point of view, that things, you've got to raise your price, you've got to raise your standards in all
Yes.
aspects, because if you're
Yes.
going to stay where you are, there will be a time from being getting by, you'll get into not being able to get by, and then struggling, and then
Yes.
suffering, and then
Yes,
failing,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So you've got
Exactly.
to you've got to really allow yourself, and Robin is saying how to manage your money, budgeting, what you can do to help yourself to do so. Great, that's a great question.
Oh,
So how can they manage money?
and and Robin, I will be happy to reach out to you directly. I'm, looking at the time, but I also
Right.
wanted to say to ask people to think about making decisions from where you want to be. Be
Right.
future focused, because all too often I see people when they're stuck rereading that previous chapter,
Hmm.
you're going backwards, you're never making any traction, and we can't
Yeah.
succeed beyond our current beliefs. So if
Hmm.
you don't believe that you can raise your standards, if you don't believe that you're going to make more money, then you don't succeed
Absolutely.
beyond that. So please have faith in yourself and make decisions from where you want to be.
Absolutely. Maddie says, great show, best one yet. I can relate. Thank you so much, Maddie. And
Thank
thank
you,
you, everyone
Maddie.
else also who is tuned in. We've got to wrap up very soon, Eleni. So
Yes.
I just want to say, once again, this conversation again has been so insightful, and it has helped people so much. And guys, any questions you have, please don't stop.
Please.
Comment,
Yes.
post your questions in comment section. Send us
Yes.
your questions. We would love to answer them as much as we can. And please join us in the next episode as well. And you can email us all the questions at
Yes.
tv@dreamaniac.com, and we will make sure that Eleni gets your questions and she responds
Yes.
to them personally. As well as, please make sure to check out other shows on Dreamaniac.com as well. Before we wrap up, Eleni, and before I do the sponsorship information, I just want to ask one simple question. Today, if I am feeling guilty or if I am feeling ashamed, where do I begin to have that guilt and shame around money to start walking away from me?
To release that guilt and shame is to have grace with yourself. And first, you have to understand why if it's guilt and shame around debt, don't be afraid to ask yourself why you took on that debt. Because the awareness is the key. Without awareness, we can't go in either direction. So if it's
Right.
about debt, understand why you took on that debt. If it's about having so much wealth, understand why. Maybe you feel guilty about leaving friends behind. Maybe you feel disloyal to the community you were raised in if they weren't as financially successful as you. So
Right.
just don't be afraid to ask the question, why do I feel this
Absolutely.
way?
Absolutely. And that's pretty much it for this show today, this episode today, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
Before we go, I just want to say we want to thank our sponsor, Coach A.M. Williams. He's
Yes,
the co-author of best-selling book, Resilience, from Setback to Comeback. Please go and
yes,
check out his book. It's available on all big websites out there where you can find the books, Amazon, eBay, and all that. And you can find the information on our website, Dreamaniac.com as well. So once again, guys, if you want to know more about Eleni, if you want to know more about business insights now, please go to www.dreamaniac.com/Eleni, or you can just go to businessinsightsnow.com, and on all social media, just search for Business Insights Now.
yes.
Uh, as well as you can search for Eleni Anastos. And if you need any kind of information on strategizing, branding, growth of your business, you can contact me at Szebastian.com, and you can directly follow me and reach out to me on any social media as Szebastian Onne. Thank you very much for everyone for tuning in. Thank you,
Thank
Eleni, for this
you.
great show again. And as I say always, until next, honor, love, and inspire yourself from within to dream big and make
Yes,
it happen. Take
yes.
care. Bye.
Bye.